Linsley with the production of a podcast of the same name, available wherever you listen to podcasts. She also is a published author with her third book almost ready for publication. She teaches workshops and classes and facilitates retreats. She also serves as interim minister for CSL and is currently serving CSL Bakersfield. She is a sought-after guest speaker, having spoken at Unity at the Lake in South Lake Tahoe, Unity in Sacramento, and Centers for Spiritual Living in Bakersfield, Tacoma, Albuquerque, Grass Valley, Auburn, Sacramento, Placerville, Reno, of course Lake Tahoe, Las Vegas, and Silva, North Carolina, and Lake Havasu? Lake Hasu. Interesting. She believes we were put on this earth to be happy and powerful and express ourselves as the unique manifestations of spirit that we are. She lives in rural North Nevada with her 2 dogs, 2 cats, and 2 horses, and enjoys driving her sports car, riding her horse, going to the range, gardening, cooking, and attending potlucks. Her message today is From Pieces to Peace. And we invite Karen to the stage. And if we could press the record button, we will have that for our newsletter next week.
Good morning, everybody. It is so nice to be here once again. I love coming up here and seeing all of you wonderful people and basking in the energy that is created with the meditations. And oh my God, the music this morning was absolutely off the charts wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So my topic today, Pieces into Peace, comes from Centers for Spiritual Living Global Vision. And every year we produce a set of topics. And this month it was Pieces into Peace. And I did some looking around and some research and about this thing. And you know, sometimes life just falls apart, right? Things just fall into pieces. It's like a vase that falls off the countertop and shatters. And sometimes that happens to us in our life. And you know, jobs are lost, institutions go away, people age and get sick, homes get foreclosed on, relationships begin to suck and then they go away. Stuff happens. Stuff happens sometimes. And I'd like to propose a different way of looking at it when life falls apart. You know, there's an expression, and we've got bumper stickers and you know, feces happens. But I think there's a different way to look at it. I think that when life falls apart, when we are in pieces, consider that it might simply be a grand calling, an invitation to rise to something greater. And I have another unique perspective on this as well. Some folks like to call what happens in life God's will. You know, they say the universe wanted it like this, spirit's desire, all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But I'd like to present with you a different perspective. And if it hits you the way it hit me when I first contemplated this perspective, this will knock your socks off. It did mine. I was cruising along. My life had fallen to pieces yet one more time. And I was in pity of, oh, poor me, and victim mode, and why did they do that to me, and, you know, all this stuff. And I was reading a book, Conversations with God, book 1. And in that book, he said, God wants for us what we want for us. He said, your will for you is God's will for you. You are living your life the way you are living your life. And I, God speaking, have no preference in the matter. And I read that several times, and I paused and I thought about it, and it was like a ton of bricks hitting me. It was like one of those aha moments. It was a spiritual awakening. And all at the same time, I realized that God has no preference. There is no such thing as God's will in my life. It's my will. And I can move from Kingdom 1, victim consciousness, to Kingdom 4, life happens as me in an instant. And I did. I did. I began to take charge of my life from that point forward. And to this day, I no longer believe that God has a will for us. I believe that God is there as a source of power and strength and joy and peace for us when our life falls to pieces. If it does have a will, that's the will. It wants us to be joyful and powerful. I have a couple more quotes for you besides that Neil Donald Walsh quote. Charles Fillmore, founder of Unity, in his book called Dynamics for Living, said it should not be inferred, but that the will of divine mind is to be set aside in prayer. We are to pray that the will of God enter into us and become a moving factor in our life. The Father does not take our will from us. He gives us the utmost freedom in the exercise of the will. He imparts an understanding of the law, through the operation of which we can make any condition that we desire. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I read that and I went, there it is again. Another great one telling me it's my will, not God's will. God's just giving me strength. God's just giving me freedom. Ernest Holmes, the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living, said the will of God must be ever consistent with the nature of the divine being. And what I got from that was that basically we're being told by all of these great wisdom people that our job is to embody qualities of spirit. And in that embodiment, we are answering our very own soul's invitation, our soul's call to move to something greater in life. I don't believe that God is some judging being separate from us, wanting or not wanting things. I think that God is a force. It's an energy. It's our guiding light. It's our source of all things good in life. But the wanting, the will, that's us. That's our stuff. So what I'm proposing here is that when feces happens and life falls to pieces, we use that as a guiding light. Yes, we do our grieving, we allow all the feels, but remember that ultimately, when all is said and done, every life circumstance presented to us is an invitation to step into something greater. You know, we don't say because of a breakup, well, I'm never going to get in a relationship again. We look at ourselves and we change within ourselves what wants to be changed so that we can be elevated a little higher and move into a greater thing, a greater relationship. We don't say because of a loss that we're never going to put ourselves in that position again. That's so limiting. Instead, we rise up greater than ever in ultimate peace and joy and confidence for having successfully weathered the losses, and we come out the other end more peaceful than ever and stronger than ever. You know, Unity and Centers for Spiritual Living and a couple of others, we're all part of an umbrella called New Thought. And as far as I'm concerned, this is what the teaching of New Thought is all about. This is the grand bottom line, the biggie. And I would like to invite you to think that if you are resisting in any way this idea that God does not have a will for us, to take some quiet time and ask yourself, why? Why? I didn't resist it. I was like, oh yeah, that makes total sense to me. So here we are. I'm proposing that God has no preference. I'm proposing that it's not God's will when a loss happens, when things fall apart. I'm proposing that sometimes they just do. And our job is to rise to something greater as a result of that, to learn the lesson, to sink into it, to glean the wisdom from it, and then move higher and greater. Our job is to put it back together in a way that is more beautiful than it ever was before, or than we could ever have imagined. You know, there's a practice called kintsugi. And kintsugi is a Japanese art that repairs broken pottery with gold. And I did some research on this, and I looked on the internet, and they had these beautiful pieces of pottery that had fallen apart, and they had these gold veins running through them, and I thought they were much more beautiful and much more full of character than the originals. What they do is they take this broken pottery and they put it back together with gold, creating a new piece that's even more beautiful than it was before. So imagine a piece of pottery falls to the floor and it breaks into pieces. And the owner of the pottery may lament the loss a little bit, but what she also does is she picks up the vase. She picks up those pieces. She painstakingly puts them back together. If she's a kintsugi practitioner, she does it with gold. Some of us glue the pieces back together, and you know they have glitter glue now? With different colors of glitter, we can use different things. And we create something that's even more beautiful out of what was. So how do we do that? How do we take the pieces of our life and put them all back together when it falls apart, when it's all in pieces? I believe that these spiritual practices that we teach around here, we've done a few of them today. We've prayed, we've meditated, and we have sung. Those are all spiritual practices. If we do those consistently every single day, not just on Sundays when you come here, but every day, you do those consistently, and you build up this incredible strength. You build up this beautiful power within yourself, so that when life falls to pieces, you have the means and the tools to put it back together. And we've got some examples of that. You know, when we put things back together and it looks different. Remember when COVID happened? And in some ways, we are still putting the pieces back together. Now, when COVID happened, I was serving in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they kept saying, I can't wait till it gets back to normal. And I said, no, it's not ever going to go back to that. You guys are going to have to create something new and something different out of these pieces that are left of your community. And they did. They did. There's no going back to normal, because what used to be normal isn't normal anymore. We've got to create a new normal. And that's another advantage that we get from doing these spiritual practices. The creativity flows through us and we begin to get ideas. And I'm here to tell you that if there's an idea there, there's a yes in the idea. So we gather up the pieces. We gather up the cherished pieces of our life that we want to keep when things fall apart. And we release if they're too broken and too cracked and too damaged to keep, we release those pieces and we fill it in with something greater and something better. We release those damaged pieces with love and gratitude because they served a really good purpose for a really long time. But we put something new together. We do our grief work and we let ourselves fully feel all the feels so those things don't get plugged up in our consciousness and cause trouble later, because they will. They will. And then we begin to put all the pieces back together. Slowly sometimes, painstakingly sometimes, with more gratitude for the skills and the guidance that we receive from a consistent and a persistent spiritual practice. We were talking before the service started today about getting new body parts. Because the old body parts start to wear out and they don't work so well anymore. And so medical technology has advanced to a point where we can get new body parts. And so they put that new piece in there, and then we go and we use tools like physical therapy and things like that to put ourselves back together physically and get our strength back. But it takes a little bit of time, especially when you get older. It takes more time. It takes more time to heal from that stuff. But once it heals, we're doing things we haven't been able to do in years. That was my experience with my hip. I'm doing things I didn't realize how bad it was for so long till I got the new one, and then I went, oops, yeah. And so sometimes when life falls to pieces, we don't really realize how bad it was for so long until we're forced to look at it. So we put the pieces back together and a new life begins to emerge. A new life that is free from the old stuff that was limiting us and holding us back. A new life that consists of showing up in new ways in the world. Maybe as more embodiment of spirit. Maybe more God-like than ever for us, so that we can embody those qualities of spirit and show up as spirit. Somewhere in your mission statement it says, as me. We show up as us. Unique and individualized manifestations of spirit. That if there is a God's will, that's how we do that. That's how we do that. We become like that beautiful vase that has cracks filled with gold. We're not perfect, but we're full of beautiful, rich character. And then we might show up to a celebration such as this, and we hear that beautiful music and we feel it. And then at the end, when we close, sometimes we close with that peace song, and we might feel that peace. And then we move out into the world, and because we've been feeling it, we spread it around. And so that's my vision, my affirmation for all of you today as I close. That we move out into the world as unique and individualized manifestations of spirit, shining that light of peace and joy and wisdom and all the other good stuff that goes along with it. And we spread all that good stuff around. And so I am acknowledging that there is indeed only one power, one presence, one spirit, one God, one universe, one force, one energy. And that it lives and moves and breathes and has its being and experience the physical in and through, and most especially as each and every one of us. And I am affirming right here and right now that each one of us feels that presence living in us. I am affirming that each one of us embodies that spirit as we move out into the world at the end of our service today. I am affirming that we are shining the light of love and joy and peace and harmony wherever we go and whatever we do and whoever we do it with. And so it is with great gratitude that I release these words into that lawn, knowing it has taken them, and said a most emphatic and joyful yes. And I anchor, and so it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. That was some very sound advice.